Honourable members, Mr Speaker.
Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Honourable youth members, I respectfully acknowledge that we are sitting today on the land of Aboriginal people and pay my respects to elders past and present. I thank them as First Australians for their careful custodianship of the land over countless generations. We are indeed fortunate in this country to have two of the world's oldest continuing living cultures in Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples whose lands, winds and waters we all now share. I will now ask Sally Stowbridge to join me on the dais to give the acknowledgement of deaf leaders.
Hello, your honourable youth members. We are here for our Deaf Youth Parliament today. My name is Sally, and I'd like us to take a moment to reflect and remember what happened in our past. The Aboriginal people have been on this land for a long time, and the deaf community were established a few hundred years ago as they came in from England and other parts of the world in settler ships. There was no deaf community in Australia prior to those settler ships. So those initial leaders knew what deaf communities they had in England, Scotland and Ireland. They encouraged and set communities here in Australia because of the importance of community access and language. So as they settled from Britain, England, Ireland and other countries, we found the immersion of Auslan, the valuable language of our deaf community that is very cherished in its history, culture, as it became Auslan after those previous generations before them. All of our leaders in the past have worked hard to advocate today, as our current leaders continue to do, to unite us through Auslan and our deaf community. I'm looking at our future leaders, our deaf youth leaders, who are going to lead us into the future for the deaf community. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable youth members, it is a pleasure to be here with you today in my role as Speaker for your Youth Parliament and to welcome you as youth members. We're delighted to have you in the Legislative Assembly Chamber for the 2024 Deaf Youth Parliament. This Deaf Youth Parliament came about through the cooperation of Deaf Connect, Queensland Department of Education and the Queensland Parliamentary Service. The Queensland Parliament is proud to host what we believe is the first youth parliament of its kind in the Commonwealth, to be conducted entirely in Auslan. We hope this will be a great opportunity for students from the deaf community to engage in civics education. We're also pleased to welcome a group of students from Bus Stop Films, Willow, Michael, Jackson and Brianna, who will be working with our videographer today to interview some of you as students, parents and teachers who are here to assist us to capture the essence of this very exciting event. We're actually hoping to produce a documentary based on the footage captured of today's Parliament to record and promote this inaugural event. It is a privilege to be a Member of Parliament because members represent all of those who live in their electorates, our Queensland communities. And Parliament is more than government. Our Parliament includes the Premier, the Cabinet Ministers, the government backbenchers, but also includes the Shadow Cabinet, the Opposition Leader, Opposition backbenchers, and members who represent minor parties and independent members. All of these groups and individuals come together to speak about important matters for all Queenslanders and to make laws that shape our society. Think about how the ideas that you are going to be debating today and how those proposed changes could affect your lives. These ideas could really have a big impact. The work done by Parliament officials affects all Queenslanders, and this is why members will be in touch with the people they are representing and listen to their views. It is great to see so many schools participating in this Youth Parliament. I want to welcome students from Runcorn State High School, Queensland Academy Creative Industries, Miami State High School, William Ross State High School, and Atherton State High School. And these schools will make up the government to my right. We also welcome students who are making up His Majesty's Loyal Opposition to my left. These schools are Pimlico State High School, Isvold State High School, Toowong State School, Tamborine Mountain State High School, St Patrick's College, and Clearview Christian College. And I also wish to welcome our Youth Sergeant-at-Arms, Harlan, from Trinity Bay State High School, where I'm from in Far North Queensland. Now, ordinarily, members in the Parliament would say, "Hear, hear," to encourage their fellow members, because applause is not permitted in the Parliament. Saying "hear, hear" is the way that we would show agreement and respect. However, today, we will be doing things a little differently. So today, you will be allowed to applaud, and we encourage you to use the applause sign as "hear, hear." Can we all have a "hear, hear"? Great job. Well done, youth members. I now declare the inaugural Deaf Youth Parliament open, and I call the Youth Premier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today I'd like to share some of my musings, a vision for future Queensland, a vision that includes more deaf gatherings, more community events, examples like the Deaf Festival, held annually in Brisbane. These events are amazing simply because everybody from around Queensland gets together, has a chance to socialise and catch up. These events are critical for our community. Deaf people gathering, socialising, role modelling language, concepts and understandings for future generations of deaf children, thus empowering them for more positive futures. It's important for the deaf youth to develop a sense of identity and belonging to these communities. These gatherings are critical for a community. Deafness can be quite an isolating disability, especially when you look at everyday life and the barriers the deaf community face in a hearing world. Taking into account rural and remote deaf people and communities, the isolation is more profound. So deaf gatherings and deaf events are critical for us as a community. Unfortunately, all of these things require funding and grants, so it would be great to see more funding and grants available for us to hold our events. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
I call the Youth Leader of the Opposition.
Good morning, Mr. Speaker, and the members of the House. If you think about how old the education system is, but yet just this year, a teacher called my cochlear implants headphones and told me to then take them off. If you think about hearing aids and cochlear implants and how long they have been around, and thinking about deaf and hard of hearing students and what they have to endure. Mr. Speaker, my vision for the future of Queensland is for there to be a better learning environment for our deaf and hard of hearing students. And this starts today. Each and every one of us in this parliamentary system has a role to play to make a legacy for our future generations. I want everyone in this parliamentary house to look back to this day and think this is where it all started. We will do this from the outback of Australia all the way to our coastal regions. We are one state with one goal, an all-inclusive learning environment for our deaf and hard of hearing students. Our children in Queensland are priceless and need to be championed. No matter who they are, we can start this by educating Queensland schools about how deaf and hard of hearing students can struggle without an accommodating learning environment within our education system. Things like reducing noises that they would struggle most with, which are kids talking while the teacher is giving instructions, or other students in other classrooms making noises and shouting, creating that background noise. And the cleaners utilising electrical equipment on school grounds. Now, this could be as simple and as quick as improving classroom acoustics to minimise the background noise, and to solutions such as providing translation devices to support deaf or hard of hearing students. As the opposition, we will take charge of this and motivate people from all walks of life to work with us to make a difference to the education system of our future. Members, what we do right now as elective representatives, we must leave this old system, leave it behind, and make a new legacy. That legacy is an all-inclusive learning environment for deaf and hard of hearing children. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I call the Youth Minister for Disability Services, Sport and the Arts.
Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, I think it is critical that we have captioning at the cinemas. This is to provide access to people who are deaf and hard of hearing. Also, for school sports, we need to enable deaf students to participate through the use of visual aids, such as lighting and flags, and also teachers who are able to learn some basic signs that are related to those sports and those sporting terminologies. Sometimes we are unable to understand English, so using captions are not always adequate, and so using captions are easy for me to be able to understand what I'm referring to. I do have a hard time to understand my family because they don't use sign, and I get frustrated. So I need to have better access to Auslan, and for my family to have support as well. And so they were able to have support from when I was born. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I call the Youth Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Imagine going to the movies and not understanding a thing that is happening in this movie that you paid to watch. Sitting there, staring at a picture, trying to make something of it. This is what I have to face every time I go to the movies. I believe that all cinemas in Queensland should be compelled to use subtitles at every screening of a film. By doing this, it will increase accessibility for customers who are deaf or hard of hearing. To help support those that are deaf or hard of hearing, the first way we can do this is by making a movie where screening have subtitles. Or not. But in doing so, it will not only support our deaf and hard of hearing community, but it will also satisfy those who don't enjoy subtitles while watching a movie. For this to be a place of inclusion and show equality throughout the deaf community and the hearing community, cinemas can show respect by not overcharging for movies with subtitles. To compensate for those who don't like subtitles, this is where the cinema website can clearly show the different screenings of subtitles and non-subtitled movies. It can benefit all people to enjoy their time at the cinema. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Before calling the next speaker, it's important for the House to note that the Youth Minister for Disability Services, Sport and the Arts has a motion before the House, and that motion states, 1, that Section 4 of the Jury Act 1995 be amended to allow deaf people to serve on juries in Queensland courts. 2, that all cinemas in Queensland be compelled to use subtitles at every screening of a film to increase accessibility for customers who are deaf or hard of hearing. And 3, that school sports be modified for deaf students through the use of visual aids, light systems, flags, and all coaches attending basic Auslan classes, including sports terms. I will now call the Youth Premier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today I would like to discuss the importance of changing Section 4 of the 1995 Jury Act. It incorporates the fact that a deaf person cannot be a member of the jury. This law needs to change. The jury is representative of the broader community. A juror is impartial and unbiased. Everyone in the community should be treated as equals. Excluding a deaf person from a jury means that they are no longer able to perform the justice, which then keeps our community safe that we are a part of. The perception is that a deaf person would need an interpreter in the jury room, and that could create a bias. But, as we know, interpreters can be impartial and are impartial, It is their role to interpret the information faithfully without bias. So, the 1995 Jury Act needs to be changed. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
I call the youth member for Ross.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I am pleased to support this motion. The reason for that includes the fact that all should have access. Why should deaf people miss out? Why can't they look at the movie screen like everybody else?
Thank you, youth member. I call the youth member for Bremer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to speak in support of the issues we've spoken about today at the House. Section 4 of the Disability Act, 1995, providing deaf and hard of hearing people with better access within the community, to make sure that the systems are made to fit for deaf and hard of hearing people. We have better access for deaf and hard of hearing people that will not have a negative impact on the rest of the community, and the deaf and hard of hearing people will be able to partake within the community and enjoy equality as everybody else does. Additionally, I believe that we need to have access for sports with those visual aids, such as lighting and flags provided, and those sports teachers having access to, those sports teachers and trainers and coaches having access to Auslan and understanding some basic Auslan signs to enable us to participate. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Is there anyone on the speaking list that I have not called? Honourable youth members, the question is that the motion moved by the Youth Minister for Disability Services, Sport and the Arts be agreed to. Those of that opinion say aye. Those against, no. I think the ayes have it. It is now time for private members' statements, and I call the Youth Minister for Olympic and Paralympic Games.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to share my private member's statement. about the establishment of a bilingual high school that's available for Auslan and English here in Brisbane. Currently, I attend Toowong State School, which is a bilingual program. It's an amazing program that's very inclusive. I'm able to communicate directly with my teacher, which means that I can communicate freely and easily and obtain more knowledge. It positively impacts my mental health. I'm more engaged, more excited, and more willing to learn and be ready to be engaged in the classroom. It's given me the motivation that I'm able to understand the instructions. I acknowledge the passion that's shared across the room and I'm able to access it all. I should have the right to access education through direct teaching. It is really important for us deaf and hard of hearing students to feel included. It's a great opportunity to have a bilingual high school, and if the government could establish one, that would be amazing. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
So it does happen in the Parliament, but we have a misunderstanding. So that was the Youth Shadow Minister for Olympic and Paralympic Games. I'll now call the Youth Minister for Olympic and Paralympic Games.
Deaf children need gatherings. We need a cultural centre so that we can all communicate equally with each other and staff members or people who may work who understand the use of sign language. It would be wonderful to have this access all day, every day, and reduce isolation.
A reminder to students that we can't hear any applause, but we will allow the applause as a hear today. I call the Youth Leader of the House.
Mr. Speaker, I have a problem with the games. Deaf people have an issue with watching sporting games and events on TV. The subtitles are always lagging, and it makes it difficult for us to watch it and read. So perhaps we could have an interpreter on the screen The problem is that deaf people use captions all the time, and other hearing people use it as well. So we need to have the captions because sometimes we don't use our hearing devices, but really it's better to have an interpreter on the screen with the view or with the TV show. And when you do this, we will need to have interpreters that are able to switch out because they might get tired and they need to keep... the interpreters need to have a break as well. And the interpreters will work together to help each other. So sometimes it can be a problem for us as a deaf community. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I call the youth member for Ross.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today, I would like to share with the House that Esvold should have interpreters in our Waka Waka language and Auslan as well.
Thank you, Youth Member. I call the Youth Member for Diamantina.
I would like to suggest that all airports, train stations, and bus services have Auslan access for any announcement that may be made in English. It's easy enough to have screens in place to allow this access. It allows deaf people to understand what is happening at the airports, train stations, and bus stations if there are delays or cancellations.
Thank you, Youth Member. I call the Youth Member for Walsh.
I apologise, Mr. Speaker, I'm a little bit nervous. I think it is important that we see more deaf people in performances and able to enjoy different performances in Auslan. Auslan is a rich language and we are proud to have this language, and it would be enjoyable to watch the language in performances. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Member for Walsh. I call the Youth Member for Tully.
I would love to see more access and deaf people playing sports at a competitive level. And seeing other deaf athletes supporting each other and it would be wonderful to see different schools interacting and playing sports against each other. It doesn't happen at the moment due to inaccessibility. Thank you.
Thank you, Member for Tully. I call the Youth Member for Weir.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There are many deaf students from different countries. It's a great idea if we have a deaf school so that everybody can come together and communicate and talk with each other. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Member. And I call the youth member for Wenlock.
Sometimes we have to work hard to try to understand. I forgot. Don't understand? Mr. Speaker, I would like to suggest a bill making shopping centres more accessible for the deaf community by allowing deaf awareness training and allowing these people to communicate with us more effectively. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, honourable youth members. We will now take a break for lunch, and we will resume the Parliament not too far away.
Honourable members, Mr. Speaker.
Welcome back, honourable youth members. I hope you enjoyed your lunch in some fresh air and sunshine. We will now move to the opposition motion. I call the Youth Shadow Minister for Olympics and Paralympic Games.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I move that this Youth Parliament supports the opening ceremony at the Brisbane 2032 Olympics and Paralympic Games should be limited to a parade of the competing nations. And that the 2032 Brisbane Olympics and Paralympics will include an international primary schools competition in rugby league, netball and surfing. And that an equal amount of television coverage be provided to both the Paralympics and the Olympic Games. I'm going to talk more to the third point about the equal amount of TV coverage. It's really important that we provide equality and that equality is genuine. Government often says that we have an equal society, but is it really equal? Have we considered that notion? People with a disability shouldn't face barriers in the way of TV coverage. These athletes have worked hard to earn their position and they're at a disadvantage. That is not an appropriate reason. It should be equal, fair and respectful. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Youth Member. I call the Youth Minister for Olympic and Paralympic Games.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I believe that all children at school should be involved in all sports, within the Olympics and the Paralympics and the Deaf Olympics as well, so that all children have access. The Olympics and Paralympic staff and volunteers at events should have deaf awareness training and have that knowledge and have a knowledge of minimum sign language so that we can get involved with complete access with communication. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Youth Minister. I call the Youth Member for Thomson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I stand here today on a motion in regards to the Olympics and the Paralympics to have equal coverage for each country. The 2032 Olympics and Paralympics shown on TV to roughly 20 million people who will be watching. There are about 17 million people who watch the Paralympics and Olympics, but you see that they don't have equal coverage. Both are important events, and we need to improve the level of access, as well as take a focus on Australian people in the 2032 Olympics.
Thank you, Youth Member. I call the Youth Leader of the House.
Reflecting upon TV coverage in Australia, there is sometimes, if I look at other countries like America or international countries, I think there should be more coverage and funding for coverage so people have the capacity to pay more to look at the news and then highlight the coverage on the news, especially looking at the Paralympics and General Olympics. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Youth Leader of the House. I call the Youth Member for Zamia.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm here today to discuss a serious matter that affects the next generation and we need this fixed for our next generation who are going to do something about it now. Media is very powerful, am I right? And we encourage a culture of empowerment and inclusivity. Do you agree? Then why do Paralympians receive significantly less media attention compared to the Olympic counterparts? Why is it we struggle to find the Paralympics on free-to-air television as opposed to every channel being taken by sport when the Olympics are on? We are hurting our next generation. Children and young people today are influenced by what they see on television. By observing athletes in the Paralympics from all over the world with diverse backgrounds and different abilities, inspires them to understand that greatness comes in many forms and teaches them that their dreams and goals can be reached, regardless of limitations, not only physically, but also mentally. It's not only hurting our next generation, it's also hurting our Paralympians. Every athlete who competes at the highest level, whether in the Olympics or the Paralympics, have undergone years of rigorous training, sacrifice, and dedication. Their achievements deserve equal recognition. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Youth Member. I call the Youth Member for Diamantina.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to ask about what about full access that we all require for access to sporting events through our referees and other sport leaders. So we would require all these people to use basic Auslan within the sporting clubs. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I now call the Youth Member for Pascoe.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to share about the competitions in our country and take a microscope and focus in on that. To have more focus on diversity and participants. And that will shed a spotlight and have excitement for that event. Having international audiences and feeling more engagement and connection by sharing it on a world stage. The community will be able to see the culture, and work in partnership and also encourage people to share and showcase Queensland and the culture. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Youth Member. I call the Youth Member for Vincent.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I am pleased to support the motion that the opening ceremony at the 2032 Brisbane Olympics and Paralympics should be limited to a parade of the competing nations. Having a parade limited to competing nations highlights the athletes themselves, as well as their sports, instead of having a parade showcasing celebrities. If the parade has a core focus on the athletes and their countries, people will watch to have pride in their country. Instead of having a parade that flaunts celebrities, it could focus on the hosting country's culture. Australia's Indigenous history could be showcased by use of music, traditional dress, and symbols in the opening ceremony. A simpler ceremony is without a doubt more inclusive and accessible, which will increase viewership and attract tourists. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Youth Member. I call the Youth Member for Walsh.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to see more deaf people performing. I want to enjoy seeing Auslan on stage with people performing as deaf representatives on stage using Auslan. It allows us the capacity to be proud of our language and to acknowledge the amazing work of our elders. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I call the Youth Member for Tully.
Mr. Speaker, I want to see more deaf people being included and deaf students being included in sport competitions within schools. At the moment, there is not enough people playing sports because it is not accessible. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Youth Member. I call the Youth Member for Weir.
I believe it is critical for the Deaf Olympics to have the same respect, and I want to see deaf athletes from the Deaf Olympics carrying their country flags at the opening ceremonies. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Member. And I call the Youth Member for Wenlock.
Mr. Speaker, we haven't actually spoken yet about how we want to choose which sporting events that we'd like to watch at the Olympics and have Auslan interpreters provided there. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Youth Members, is there anyone on the speaking list or not on the speaking list that I haven't called who would like to speak to the motion? Then I will put the question. The question is that the motion moved by the Youth Shadow Minister for Sport be agreed to. Those of that opinion say aye. Those against, no. I think the noes have it. A division has been called. Ring the bells. Light the lamps. Close the bars. Honourable Youth Members, the question is that the motion be agreed to, for which a division has been called. Will the government whip advise what the government votes are for the ayes or noes?
Mr. Speaker, there are 54 noes.
And will the opposition whip advise what the opposition votes are for the ayes or noes?
There are
38 ayes, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Youth Members, the result of the division is ayes 38, noes 54. The division is resolved in the negative. Thank you, Whips. I now call the Youth Leader of the House.
I call that the House be adjourned.
We will now have the adjournment debate. I call the Youth Minister for Disability Services, Sport and the Arts.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The topic I'd like to discuss today is captioning, and it should be accessible on all television programs, movies and the like. The reasons behind compulsory captioning is simply because a lot of TV shows that I'm watching are inaccessible because they are not captioned. Some are, which is lovely, but why the inadequacies of captioning everything when everything should be visibly captioned for a deaf or hard of hearing, or even hearing people who need access to the captions? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Youth Member. I call the Youth Member for Zamia.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We include a variety of ways of teaching and supporting. Do you all agree? Now we're talking about visual alarms for hard of hearing students in school. At the moment, we don't have access to that, and that's a big problem. Alarms in school today have noises but no visual aids. Deaf students cannot hear the alarms. So we need visual alarms, and it's very, very necessary. Everyone in the community needs to learn and support this decision. Fire alarms, lockdowns, bells, they need to have the flashing lights and visual aids. Deaf and hard of hearing students are unaware of evacuation procedures. For example, for a fire, the light will be red. The flashing lights in blue show lockdown. And a green flashing light shows the bell. Sometimes hearing students can't hear the bell themselves. So it helps everyone and it's beneficial to everyone, not just deaf and hard of hearing. We have to respect and be inclusive to everyone. This is very vital for the future. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Youth Member. I call the Youth Shadow Minister for Olympics and Paralympic Games.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm going to propose that the cinemas should have captions open on the screen for the following examples. The current option of cap view actually gives me a headache. It's an eyesore. It's so close to your eyes and you actually miss out on the action that's happening on the big screen. When we talk about universal design, cap view does not meet that. Universal design means everyone can equally participate and benefit. For example, if we had open captions on the screen itself, it means everyone would be able to understand the message. And that's important for good and equal access. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I call the Youth Member for Banksia. I call the Youth Minister for Disability Services, Sport and the Arts.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to reflect upon my time growing up at home and reflecting upon the accessibility and how there are barriers in place, even talking to my parents, which leads to a lot of confusion about life topics, as you can imagine. Limited conversations around the dinner table. My parents aren't fluent in sign language. I'm very fortunate to have friends that I can communicate with, but you can imagine how frustrating it is at home when my parents speak to me in English, which is not my native language. So it would be wonderful for the government to pass some motions to ensure that accessibility is given to all households. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, Youth Minister. Is there anyone who wishes to speak during the adjournment debate that has not yet spoken? The question is, does the House to now adjourn? Those of that opinion say aye. Just testing you. All those against, no. I think the ayes have it. Honourable youth members, I'll make some closing remarks about today's inaugural Deaf Youth Parliament. First of all, I want to commend all of you for the high quality of your contributions. You've all spoken confidently, conscientiously and effectively, and I believe, based on what I've seen today, that we are in great hands going forward. Some of you may even be future members of Parliament. In a few years' time, when you vote, you will be electing a member to be your voice in this Parliament, to vote on laws which will affect everyone. So I encourage you not only to vote, but also to be personally involved in your community and to advocate for the values and causes that are important to you. You need to get used to having your say. And there are many ways to get involved in our democracy here in Queensland. If you see that there's a problem or something that's just not working, take responsibility for it. Join an action group or start one if necessary. You may wish to sign a petition or organise a community meeting. You might even think about joining a community group or perhaps a political party. One day you might even stand at an election for Parliament. Finally, I wanted to make some remarks about the event itself today. An event like this is not possible without many people going to great lengths to make it possible, and they deserve our sincere appreciation. Firstly, let's acknowledge your teachers and say thank you to them for all the help they've given you in getting ready for today. Your teachers are very special people, and you will look back in many years to come and remember very fondly just how important they've been in shaping the person that you will become. I want to make special mention of Sally Strobridge from the Department of Education, who has worked very hard in both advocating to get this event off the ground and coordinating students and teachers across the state. Thank you, Sally. Let's do another big hear for Sally. I'd also like to thank Tegan Blanche, who gave the acknowledgement of deaf leaders, as well as many other teachers and supporters and parents as well who are here with us today. I want to personally acknowledge Brett Casey, the CEO of Deaf Connect, as well as Kate Dunn from Deaf Connect, who provided consultation through the planning and delivery of this event. And also, we'd thank our parliamentary education team, Rebecca, Maria, Kirsten and Cherie, for everything they've done to make today so successful. They've been really well supported by the rest of the parliamentary service from areas including our communication and marketing area, broadcast services, Hansard, IT, property services, security and catering. There are not many areas of the parliamentary service that have not been involved in some way to make this event possible. And I'd also like to acknowledge that there have been assistance provided today by Thong, Vanya, Basil, Kylie, Alana, Sal, Frida, Tam, Melissa, as well as Greta Anderson and Coralie Kemp from the Office of the Speaker. These staff have come from right across the parliamentary services to support the event. And I'd also like to say thank you to the members of Parliament who were able to join us today. Assistant Minister for Education, Corinne McMillan, Les Walker, Member for Munningborough, Michael Berkman, Member for Maywar, Cynthia Louie, Member for Cook, Melissa McMahon, Member for McAllister, Linus Power, Member for Logan, Kim Richards, Member for Redlands, Julianne Gilbert, Member for Mackay, and Bryson Head, the Member for Callide. And lastly, but certainly not least, I want to congratulate the students again. Your speeches were amazing. Your behaviour was excellent. And I know that you've done so much hard work to ensure that you could deliver your speeches today confidently and to talk about the things that matter most to you. So for me, this is also the last Youth Parliament that I will ever do. As I will not be recontesting the next election, I will no longer be Speaker. But I hope that this will be an opportunity for a future Speaker to pick up what has been, we think, a world first, and to make sure that this becomes an event that we see more often into the future. Thank you very much for having my last Youth Parliament a special one. I call the Youth Leader of the House.
Mr. Speaker, on behalf of the students of the 2024 Deaf Youth Parliament, I would like to say thank you for the time you've spent with us here today. Youth members, can we have a final hear, hear for Mr. Speaker? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.